Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, the political vigilante. I'm obviously not in my studio. I'm in an illustrious hotel room on the road. Ron Placone and I are doing our progressive comedy tour. And I have a very special guest here, former CIA whistleblower, John Kiriakou. And John, thank you so much for taking time today.
My pleasure.
First, let's give people just some context to know who you are. Tell us your history with the CIA and what happened when you did the whistleblowing and what brought all that and what was the kind of fallout from that.
Sure. My name is John Kiriakou. I spent 15 years with the CIA, the first half in analysis, the second half in counterterrorism operations. After 9/11, I was the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan. And in that capacity, I led a series of raids that resulted in the capture of a guy named Abu Zubaydah, who we believed at the time was the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. It turned out he was not the number 3 in Al-Qaeda, although he was a bad man. We captured him, and he was sent to a secret prison where several months later he was tortured. He was the first person to undergo waterboarding and a wide variety of other torture techniques. I left the CIA in 2004, and in 2007, after having waited 3.5 years for somebody to come out and say something about the torture program, I decided just to do it myself. And so I agreed to give an interview to ABC News in December of 2007, in which I said 3 things. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official U.S. government policy, not the result of a rogue, as President Bush had said. And I said that the torture program had been personally approved by the president. As you can imagine, the FBI began investigating me the very next day. They investigated me for a year, from December of 2007 until December of 2008, and they determined that I had not committed a crime, and so they closed the case. 3 weeks later, Barack Obama becomes president and appoints an old nemesis of mine, John Brennan, as the Deputy National Security Advisor. I did not know that John Brennan then secretly asked the Justice Department to reopen the case against me. And so for the next 3 years, I had no idea that I was under 24-hour surveillance, that my emails were being intercepted, that my phone calls were being monitored. And in January of 2012, I was arrested and charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage, coming out of that ABC News interview. Now, espionage is one of the gravest crimes with which an American can be charged, and it sometimes carries with it the death penalty. I was looking at 45 years in prison. I fought it up until the bitter end, and I hadn't committed espionage. And eventually the government, as onerous as it was for me, they had to finally admit that I hadn't committed espionage. They dropped those 3 charges, but I took a plea to a lesser count just to make the thing go away. I did 23 months in a federal prison, got out in 2015, and I've been working on things like prison reform, sentencing reform, human rights, civil liberties ever since.
Wow. Yeah, they can't charge you for espionage because you have to work with like an enemy of country, right? Like a foreign country.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what it had been in the past. There was a dangerous precedent set in my case, though. My judge said that she would not respect that precedent, that it had to be for a foreign country. She said that she was going to define espionage as providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. And my lawyer said, Your Honor, are you saying that a person can accidentally commit espionage, or that a journalist can commit espionage? And she said, that's exactly what I'm saying. And so we kind of knew we were doomed from the beginning. There was no getting out of it. I'm gonna cut to the chase early on in this talk, and I'm going to tell you something that one of my lawyers told me that was a bitter pill to swallow when he first said it, but it turned out to be so wise and so correct. I decided to turn down the government's offer of 23 months in prison and to go to trial, because I believed that once I could get in front of a jury, they would see how ridiculous this was. I'm a patriot, I'm not a criminal, and I certainly didn't commit espionage. And he stopped me, and he said, you know what your problem is? Your problem is that you think this is about justice, and it's not about justice. It's about mitigating damage take the deal. And I took the deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating to me on so many levels. I want to ask you later a little bit what your opinion of Gina Haspel is. But didn't she not create the enhanced interrogation program? Or
Indeed she did. You know, when Gina was, I worked for Gina. She was my boss in the CIA's Counterterrorism Center. We called her Bloody Gina Haspel. And it was because she went out to the secret site just to sit and watch a torture session, just for the hell of it, just because she wanted to. She later became the chief of the secret site, and she was later after that the chief of Guantanamo base. But yeah, Gina was one of the godmothers of the torture program. She was in up to her neck, and that's why we called her Bloody Gina. When she was named CIA director, the Washington Post called me, and they asked me to write an op-ed. They told me they'd give me 1,200 words, which is unheard of. And so I did. I wrote it. I said, look, you know, I think it's wonderful that the president wants to name a woman as the CIA director. The CIA's been run by white men for the past 70 years. Just not this woman. There are 24 other women out there who would be terrific CIA directors. But naming Gina Haspel sends a message to the workforce. And the message is that you can commit war crimes, you can commit crimes against humanity, you can carry out a torture program, or open up a series of secret prisons, or launch an international kidnapping operation called rendition. And not only are you not going to be prosecuted, you can be promoted all the way to director. That's exactly the message that we should not be sending, either to the workforce or to our friends and allies.
Yeah, because I mean, I had read not only did she go to these black sites to watch the torture, she enjoyed it.
She enjoyed it. Yes, that's correct. You know, what kind of psychopath would sit in on a torture session just for the heck of it? Like, you fly halfway around the world to watch a man be tortured and humiliated just to say that you did. Normal people don't do things like that.
Yeah, that's alarming, but also in some ways not surprising that that's who the CIA would want in charge of them, of their organization, is someone that's basically a sociopath.
And you know, one of the things that was a shock to me was in her confirmation hearing before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. She was pressed by Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat of Oregon, and she finally admitted that the program was a mistake, that it shouldn't have been done, and it didn't result in the collection of any actionable intelligence. And that was funny to me and shocking, because she was one of those CIA officers who had been trying to perpetuate this lie from 2002 onward, that the torture program did result in the collection of actionable intelligence. It just didn't. That was a lie, and they kept repeating the lie, hoping that it would stick.
Right, because as we know, I mean, I think even John McCain said this. I mean, you can torture. I mean, you could get me to say anything. You know, you can get anyone to say anything if you torture them enough.
That's right.
Especially if they're sleep deprived or whatever. They just want it to end.
And even if the victim, the torture victim, tells you what you want to hear, even if he tells you the truth, he's going to tell you so much that you have to turn all that information over to a team of analysts, and it's going to take them 6 months to figure out what was true and what was nonsense and what was just made up and what was partly true and partly not true, or speculation or whatever. And by then, the bomb you were trying to defuse has already gone off and killed 200 people.
Wow. So what?
Yeah, this whole ticking time bomb scenario, this comes right out of Hollywood. There is no such thing as a ticking time bomb scenario. You can't torture someone and say, you know, give me the code to shut the bomb off, and then he gives you the code. Real life doesn't work like that. Let me be really specific here, too. The actionable intelligence that Gina Haspel and Jose Rodriguez and other pro-torture CIA officers claim to have extracted from Abu Zubaydah, thanks to these torture techniques, was actually information that was gathered by an FBI agent named Ali Soufan. Now, Ali Soufan was, I worked with Ali in Pakistan. And believe me, it's like a kick in the gut to have to compliment the FBI, but they're really, really good at interrogations. They've been doing them since Nuremberg, right? So they know what they're doing. So what Ali did is once Abu Zubaydah was healthy enough to be interviewed, he sat across the table from him. He offered him a cigarette and a cup of tea and some dates, and he engaged him in conversation. And it took weeks before Abu Zubaydah finally opened his mouth and started talking. But once he started talking, he gave Ali information that was new to us on the structure of Al-Qaeda, on the location of Al-Qaeda cells in Europe, on the name Mukhtar, who it turned out was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. But the CIA was frustrated because Ali was taking a long time, and so George Tenet, the CIA director, asked President Bush to expel all the FBI agents from the country, the secret site. He did that. And so two contract psychiatrists, Mitchell and Jessen, took over and immediately, within 2 hours, began to torture Abu Zubaydah. Well, they started with the toughest techniques. They started with waterboarding, which they were supposed to actually finish with, not start with. He convulsed, he went into seizures, his heart stopped beating, he had to be revived. Well, they couldn't say that to headquarters, so they wrote to headquarters, we did the techniques, he cracked, he told us everything, and what they did is they just repeated Ali Soufan's information because they knew that the FBI computer system and the CIA computer system were not compatible, and so they were not sharing information. So the FBI was thinking, boy, Ali Soufan did a really great job. And at the CIA, they're thinking, wow, this torture program really works. And it was all a lie.
That's amazing. That's amazing to me. How do you look at like today's CIA and what's happening, and we're in what, war in 8 or 9 countries?
Yeah.
Are they effective at all, or are they just causing more problems?
They're not effective at all. And I say that, with like a pain in my heart because I devoted the better part of my adult life to the CIA. I was a patriot. I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to do the right thing and keep Americans safe. And it all turned out to be bullshit. There really doesn't need to be a CIA anymore. They have missed all of the major global political events of the last century, from the Berlin Wall to the Iranian Revolution to the collapse of communism. You name it, they've gotten it wrong. Time and time again, they've gotten it wrong. And so I think it's time to do something different.
What would you suggest that be?
Well, John Kennedy famously said that he wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. That was repeated in 1976 in a book by Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a senator from New York. Moynihan was mocked when that book came out in 1976, but he was onto something. The best analysis in the intelligence community does not come from the CIA. It comes from the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research. Well, there's also a human collection outfit at the Pentagon called DHS, not the Department of Homeland Security, but Defense Human Services, Defense Human Intelligence Services. They recruit spies to steal secrets just as well as the CIA does. And in terms of tech issues and interception, that's all NSA does. So why have this redundant organization in Langley that is actually sort of de facto in charge of the intelligence community when they're the ones getting it wrong all the time?
Wow, that is an excellent point.